the thing that I am most passionate about in the world is reaching unchurched people. You know, I grew up in a family that was completely unchurched. I went to a school that was completely unchurched. God happened to find me when I was a senior in high school. And, that turned my life around, completely changed the direction of my entire life and gave me a purpose that I'd never had before. And so ever since, I've just wanted to help other people experience that thing that I've experienced. And, we know that in the US and in Australia, where I'm from, the post-Christian culture is growing. In fact, here in Australia, I don't know if you know this, Thomas, or if your listeners might know this, but in Australia, we're so post-Christian, we're actually now pre-Christian again. And the way that has started to inform some of the things that I do is it's made me aware of the fact that because we're in almost a pre-Christian culture, people are interested in things of the Bible and things of Jesus again. Now, they're rejecting the established church culture that has existed for generations, but they're really open to hearing the gospel. They're really open to understanding scripture a little bit more, and they're really open to hearing about Jesus. And so my passion is to present them with Jesus in a way that is congruent with their lifestyle. And since everybody on the planet walks around every single day with one of these, a phone in their pockets, right? I just want to turn this from a tool of distraction into a tool for discipleship. And so at the moment, I'm working for YouVersion Australia, and I get to be the director of that and lead a team that is really helping people engage with the scriptures every single day, everywhere. So no matter where they're at in their faith journey, if they're at step 0 and they don't really know what to do, we're trying to help ministries and Christian influencers and Christian authors and musicians and Christian athletes and churches connect with these people who have taken this remarkable step to download God's word into their phone, right? I mean, that's a remarkable step. So I want to help those organizations connect with those people so that those people can come into a faith community. And I think technology is the best way to do that. So
many things that resonate in my heart. You said the phone could be not a tool of distraction, but a tool for discipleship.
Yeah.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, man, you think about this, right? Every single day, essentially, when people pick up their phone, if we're in ministry, we need to see this as an opportunity, because essentially what they're picking up is they're picking up a worship team because they can listen to worship music. They're picking up a pulpit because they can listen to messages. They're picking up the Bible because of apps like YouVersion give them the Bible in multiple translations, not just translations in English, but hundreds of translations around the world. And they're picking up an offering plate because they can give to their church via this thing. We're giving them a small group tool because we can, the church is really good at creating content, right? That's what we do all the time. Every single week we create more content. What we're not great at is distributing that content. And so we have to see this as a tool, this phone as a tool for for church leaders and ministry leaders to distribute content that helps disciple people every day. You've heard me probably say this before. See, again, you ask me one question and you wind me up. You've heard me say this before, man, but the closest thing that I will ever have to a disciple in the model that Jesus had is my 3 daughters, right? Because they live with me all the time. They've seen me when I'm happy. They've seen me when I'm sad. They see me when I'm angry. They see me when I'm tired. They see me when I'm celebrating. All the things that the disciples 2,000 years ago experienced with Jesus. Jesus went through all those things and they were with him. That's the closest thing I will have. But with technology, people are carrying around their church in their pocket every day. And so pastors and church leaders have the opportunity to be in people's lives every single day, not just once on a Sunday for 1 hour. We get to be in their pocket for the other 165 hours of the week. Just if we get intentional about creating content that helps people take the next step in their faith journey every single day. And so I just want to help churches get onto that idea so that they can start generating content and being pastoral influencers throughout the entire week.
How can churches connect with people emotionally and build authentic community through their branding and through their content?
Oh my gosh, dude, that's such a great question and this is the thing that most churches, most ministries, I think are struggling with at the moment, because they've started to realize that the stuff that we've been posting online and the social media strategies or the social media media calendars that we've had for the last 10 years, it's not connecting anymore. It's not working anymore. We've all seen this drop off in engagement, drop off in likes, drop off in comments, right? Or we've never really had those likes and comments that we've wanted at all. And it's interesting, I think in ministry circles especially, we blame the algorithm for that. We say it's the algorithm's fault. And I always say the algorithm will always be an issue, but it should never be an excuse. Whenever you're at a point of blaming the algorithm, replace the word algorithm with the word audience. It's not that the algorithm doesn't like your content. It's that your audience doesn't like your content. It's not that the algorithm is stopping me from getting reach. No, the audience is, because they're not resonating with what you're saying. And the reason for that is most of the time, what we do is we leverage social media as a megaphone, one-way communication only. Come to our event, sign up for this, volunteer for that. And we think that that's the answer. But what we should be doing is using social media not as a megaphone, but as a telephone, where we're inviting people into two-way conversations that we can have. And so I think it's incumbent upon church leaders to start posting content that resonates with the people who live within driving distance of their building. That is the goal. And a lot of those people, 90% of those people, probably 98% of those people don't go to your church. So we have to introduce them to your church. We have to show them how your church is impacting the local community, how your church is serving the local community. But if you scroll through 95% of church social media streams, the photos are only photos of things that happen inside their four walls of their building. We need to get out of the four walls of their building. We need to start posting content that resonates with the people who are just living their lives in your local community. We need to post content that distributes social discipleship resources to the people who are already in your building. Because if the discipleship capacity of your church is limited to the seating capacity of your church, then we're missing the opportunity to fulfill the Great Commission to go out into all the world. And all the world these days includes social media, includes Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and things like that. So we have to get onto those platforms and start leveraging them a little bit differently. If I can give your listeners one piece of advice from this, right? This is what it would be. The way, and I'm just choosing one platform, just choosing Instagram. The way that Instagram ranks, prioritizes its platform is this way. They say at the moment in 2025, DMs is their highest priority because that's where most people are spending their time. And Instagram right now is trying to figure out ways to monetize the DM component, right? The direct message component. So DMs is their top priority. Second priority is Reels. Third priority is Stories. And then their last priority, the lowest thing on Instagram's agenda, is the grid posts. Yet every church that I've ever worked with has that completely flipped. We make the grid post our number one priority. We're always trying to get that grid post up. We want our grid to look. Nobody cares about your grid anymore. Nobody cares. The grid, sorry? Instagram doesn't care about your grid post. So what if we prioritize that, then we do Stories, then we do Reels, and then DMs is last. We have to figure out a way to flip that on its head so that we can start using the platform for all that it's worth, right? And so one of the things I talk to churches about all the time is your grid. When people land on your grid, that should be like a place where they go to find out information about your church. Always have highlights at the top of your page. And the highlight shouldn't be about great things you think you've done. It should be, here's what we do for families, here's what we do for students, here's how you can find us if you're coming off the major highway to get to, like things like that help people. Because people aren't going to Google anymore to search your church. They're not typing into Google, churches near me. Guess where they're typing that? They're typing that into Facebook and Instagram and X and TikTok to find, like they're using social media as a search engine. So we need to start to change the way that we do social media to meet that need. And then we need to leverage things like Stories much better. I heard a stat recently that said 70% of people spend 80% of their time on Instagram in Stories. So we should be promoting Stories. You want to promote that event? Because a lot of church leaders listening to this, Thomas will be saying, but we need to promote our worships. Yeah, you do. I get that. Do it in Stories because then it's gone. Your grid should be all the ways that you're serving the local community in whatever context God has given you to serve in. Content is not king on social media, especially church social media. Context is king. And God has called you specifically to serve in a context, right? For you, it's in your context, in California. For me, it's in Australia. And so I'm trying to create content that resonates with the people who are living in my area. As a church leader, that's incumbent upon you as well. I think there are some churches out there that have this mandate from God to reach the world. Life Church is a great example of that. But they're one in a million. I think most church pastors are trying to reach the families, the businesses, the business owners, the people who live within driving distance of their building. Create content that serves them.
Take a breath. Let that marinate a little bit. I think, you're identifying the audience, like who has God called us to serve? And really understanding the needs of the community and identifying those needs. And like in the Silicon Valley, it's very fast paced. Everyone's getting after it. There's a lot of affluence. There's a lot of successful, educated people. And the need it might be different here than it is in other areas. But understanding your audience, really doing your due diligence, your reconnaissance, your research, understanding their pain points and struggles and challenges. Like for Silicon Valley, people are lonely.
Yeah.
People are lonely. People are depressed. People struggle with anxiety. All these mental health triggers are up, and it's like people are craving community, and the church is the voice of hope, the voice of encouragement, a place for people to be transformed and find that hope and find that community. And then starting to develop, how do you get to position yourself in your community? What are the needs that you're gonna meet, and how are you gonna tell your church's story in an authentic way?
Yeah, that's really good advice, because you got to figure out your church's voice, right, and the unique role that your church can play in the local community, which might be different than the church that's 3 blocks away, because you've got a different set of skills or a different set of resources in your church. When it comes to reaching that local community and understanding, one of the things I would encourage every pastor on the planet to do, if I could just give them one piece of advice, I would say create a podcast for your church midweek, Wednesdays, only 20 minutes long, where all you do is you invite and interview local business owners around your church. Wow. And ask them a couple of questions. So for you in the Silicon Valley, right? I would invite local business. If I was pastoring at your church, I would invite local businesses and to come in, and I would ask them, hey, what is the best thing about living and working in the Silicon Valley? What do you love most about this area? And what is the biggest need in this area? And have them talk about those 3 things. Here's what that does. It makes the community aware of the fact that you as a church leader are aware of what's going on in the community, not just what's happening inside the 4 walls of your church. It helps you get connected with all the influencers in your local community. Because here's the funny thing. There's not a business in the world that wouldn't take you up on that opportunity, because they recognize as a church leader, you've got 100, 200, 400, however many people who might become customers of that business, right? So they're not going to say no. But then also, when that business owner finds that something in their life is not going how they expected, illness, family issues, marital issues, business issues, and they're looking for hope, guess who the first person they're going to turn to is? Wait, there's that pastor down the street who interviewed me. I wonder if he might be able to give me some hope. I wonder if he might be able to pray for me. And then you'll get him even deeper connected. And all it costs you is 20 minutes a week to do one podcast and get to know the people in your local community. And if you did that, Thomas, that you would have completely different answers to what I would get on the Sunshine Coast of Australia where I am, right? Completely different reasons, completely different context, completely different issues. And you would start to address those issues in a completely different way. That's how you create context. That's how you start to understand the local community.
Data-driven discipleship.
Yes,
Data-driven discipleship right there.
Exactly. And if that's too much for people, if that's too much, I would encourage you to do this. If you haven't done this already, go to an app like YouVersion, create a page on that, and as a church leader, you can start to track what people are searching for in the Bible from your church if they decide to follow your church page, right? So if they choose your church as their church on the YouVersion app, you get data around that, and you can find out not only what Bible verses they're looking up, but what what search terms they're looking up. If they're typing in, like you said, loneliness, they might be typing loneliness into the Bible, looking to the Bible for some answers, some verses that will give them hope. You can look and see that. Oh my gosh, loneliness is really up this month.
Yeah.
We're going to do a series next month, a message series next month on loneliness specifically. It gives you that data-driven discipleship, dude. That's where it's at right now. We need to be accessing what's going on in our church, but also what's going on in the local community, because that's what makes us relevant. Again, you've heard me say this. Relevance isn't laser light shows in your worship service. It's not skinny jeans and V-neck t-shirt. It's not that. Relevance is meeting the needs of the people in the moment that they have it. And if you're meeting the needs of your local community in the moment that they're having it, that makes you the most relevant church in the neighborhood. But you have to figure out what that is.
So good. So in the settings, you're saying in YouVersion that you can track the search terms.
Yeah. Once your church has a page on YouVersion, this is anywhere in the world. If your church sets up a page, as soon as you set up that page, you start getting data from your church, from the people who follow your church, who ascribe your church as their church in the app. And that's easy to do. You promote that on social media. You promote that on Sunday services. Hey, here's a QR code to follow our church on YouVersion app. And then when they start leveraging the app, using the app on a day-to-day basis, as a church leader, you start getting some information about that. What they're reading, how often they read. This is a big one, right? Because you can see, the people in my church are only reading the Bible on Sundays. All right, we need to do a series on discipleship. We need to do a Bible class. We need to teach people the importance of reading the Bible, right? We need to give them some recommendations for Bible studies. We live in a world of recommendations, right? I mean, I'm at this point in my relationship with Netflix where it's like we're like an old married couple now, because we're together every night. Netflix knows exactly what my preferences are. It always makes recommenders, and it always checks in on me if I'm being too inactive, right? So Netflix is recommending things to me all the time. Well, as a church leader, you can start recommending things, Bible plans, Bible reading schedules to the people in your church as well.
Yeah. This in the next 10 years, if you're not a part of data-driven discipleship, you're missing the mark. You're fishing with the wrong bait. You're shooting in the dark. There's no intentionality to your plan and your strategy.
I've just bought datadrivendiscipleship.com as well.
that was the Lord. That was the Holy Spirit. Wow. Yeah. So Dave is dropping jewelry. I hope you all are picking it up and storing it. It's treasure. He's brilliant thinker. I'd love to kind of continue on the path of branding and really understanding voice. We talked about developing a church's voice and staying on mission. A lot of churches with their branding, they get off mission. They forget their why. And a brilliant quote from a friend, Ron Starling, who I spoke with today, he's like, when the church loses their why, they lose their way. How do we keep the church on the why and on the mission when it comes to their branding?
Well, I think, first of all, when the church loses their why, they lose their way. Everybody needs to just pause and write that down, or give me a second to write down. That's brilliant. But we see churches lose their way all the time when it comes to this, right? It's very easy to do because we get caught up in the culture and what's happening in the world and think that we need to address that. And this is why I keep coming back to this idea that context is king, because we have been called to reach the people who live within driving distance of your local church building. So we have to keep that at the forefront of everything we do. And when it comes to our voice, when it comes to our brand, if we're keeping that part of the mission in mind of who we're reaching, I think that will go a long way in keeping us inside the way, right? Inside the why. Yeah. So I would just add, if church loses their why, they lose their way. I will add to that, we have to always be aware of the who as well. The who is really important, who we're trying to reach, who God has uniquely called us to reach, and who God has created us to be. Because the church down the street might have a different who and a different why, and we need to keep track of what we're doing. So that would be the first thing, context. I think it's good. The outside of that, dude, Jesus obviously gave us a big why. We're supposed to preach the gospel and make disciples. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. Well, for you, Thomas, your world is Silicon Valley. So go into Silicon Valley and preach the gospel. And then obviously create disciples. And I think what we find is a lot of churches do one or the other very well. And we have to get better at doing a balance of the two. I had this church in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, give me a call just recently. Actually, they reached out to me on DMs on Instagram, and they said, hey, is there any tools that we can leverage that will help us with the Make Disciples? We are really focused and really good at preaching the gospel to unchurched people, but we're not great at the discipleship part. Is there anything that we can do? And so I started helping them through some of those things, giving them some resources to help with that discipleship piece. But it's interesting to me that they recognize, it's one of the few churches I've worked with that recognize right out of the gate, we're doing part of that well, but not the other part well. We're called to do both, not one or the other, not either or. This is a both and situation. Jesus gave us that both and. And so for me, this ties into what your friend said. This ties into what we've been saying this whole time. Go into all the world. Well, for us, in our part of the body, it's where we're located right now. So we have to go in and preach the gospel in a way that is going to be consumable by the people who live within driving distance of our building, or who live in our local community, or the people who we're sitting next to at a restaurant in town, or the people who are in the classroom with us, or the factory site with us, or the computer engineering assembly line that we're working at. Like whatever it is, we have to be able to preach the gospel to them in a way that resonates with them. And then we have to make disciples as well. So once we get them, it's not like, hey, I put my hand up to receive Jesus in a church service, the journey's over. No, the journey has just begun. And so we have to keep that in mind as well. So if we can focus on those couple of things, I think our branding we'll understand, we'll find our voice. But then we have to use data to make sure, is this resonating? Is this the thing that God has called us to do as well? So yeah, it's a big question, man, and it's a journey, and it's trial and error, and we have to be prepared to, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We have to be prepared to get tired at sometimes and not do a great job of it, but then be able to pick ourselves back up and keep pushing forward with that mission.
How do we present the resurrection story of Jesus in a way that seems personal rather than historical?
One of the things that I see churches do all the time is they think that they'll get more people in seats. And traditionally, this has kind of worked, right? Get more people in seats if we show how flashy our service is going to be. If we're doing, if it's Christmas and we're doing Little Drummer Boy and we've got drummers hanging from the ceiling or coming down on zip lines, we think that that's going to get people in. And sometimes it does. Like bums in seats is a real thing, right? We're pushing for that. What I keep telling churches to do is it's not about telling people how flashy your service is. It's about telling people stories of life change that have happened within your church. You want to get people to come to your Easter service. And then beyond that, because we don't want them just to come for one service, right? We want them to start becoming part of the local community. If we want that, then we need to tell local stories that have life change within your church. A lot of people are going to walk into the church on Easter because they've been dragged there by their mom, or, they've been promised something by their friend. Hey, I'll take you out to lunch if you come to church with me. And so they're not really happy to be there. And they might be skeptical of the resurrection. They might be able to say, well, maybe Jesus wasn't really dead, or maybe the witnesses lied. They're going to have those sorts of questions because of this post or pre-Christian culture that we live in. But what they can't argue with is a person's story of life change. What I would be doing for Easter right now, if I was in your shoes, is I would be grabbing as many different stories of life change as I possibly can from within my church. And then I would be posting those out in the weeks up to Easter and talking about the Easter story specifically. So for example, it might be a post, instead of saying, hey, come to our Easter services, we've got 18 services on the Easter weekend and book your ticket here. Instead of that sort of thing, I would be saying, this time last year, Jack was all alone. Now he's leading a small group. That is because of the resurrection. This time last year, Jenny, a single mom, didn't think she could ever walk into the church building without the roof caving in. Now she's going to be standing at the door welcoming new guests on Easter Sunday. Like, that's the sort of life change stories that I know exist in your church. But we don't tell those little stories. They're the stories that are going to resonate with people. If people are dealing with loneliness in Silicon Valley, tell a story of Steve, who is an executive at Google, but has no friends this time last year. Now, he's leading the men's ministry. He goes on camping weekends, and he can't get enough of church. Like, he has, do you know what I mean? Like, that's a story of life change that happened at your church because of the resurrection, because of faith, because of people stepping into that. They're the things that are going to attract people to your church, because people are going to go, hey, I'm lonely. Hey, I'm a single mom. Hey, I'm struggling with this. And now I can see a photo of somebody whose life was turned around. I want that in my world. Does that make sense? That's what I would be doing. I wouldn't be worrying as much about Easter sermon series, pushing that out, Easter dates. I'd be focused on telling those stories. Those stories of life change that have happened in the past year, those stories of life change that have happened over 10 years. If you can tell those stories, that will resonate with the people who are living in your community, and that is going to be the thing that will change them.
If you think of Jesus had a brand.
Yeah.
And it would be marked by transformation. It would be marked by mercy and redemption and stories of love, and Joe's life being transformed, marriages being transformed. Like, that's Jesus's branding right there.
This is what he did, right? This is what he did. We just call them parables, but he literally just did that. He told a story of somebody who did something radically different than the norm, whose life was radically changed. A prodigal son who came back, Samaritan who helped. Like, this is what Jesus did. He told stories. When did we stop doing that? When did we make it all about, we're just going to have the right dates and the right seating capacity? And, those things are important.
People are looking for something authentic.
Yeah,
something
agreed.
Imperfect, raw, uncut, uncurated. I'm broken. I need Jesus. I need hope. I need healing. I need transformation. And I'm here.
Agreed.
Because I don't have anything else to do. I don't know what else to do with my life.
Yeah.
In that moment of need, we need to be there.
And again, that's relevance, right? Relevance isn't how flashy your light show will be at Easter. Relevance is meeting people's, I'm sure, but relevance is meeting people's needs, right? Too many churches, I think, Thomas, are answering questions online that no one is asking. Yeah. We need to start answering questions that people are actually asking. And they're asking questions like, how will my life change if this happens? Like, in the lead up to Easter, if your weeks leading up to Easter, I would do it at least 6 weeks leading up to Easter. 2 stories of life transformation a week in those lead ups to Easter. And then I would be also answering some questions that people will have, and because they're asking questions about, did Jesus really die on the cross? Was Jesus really resurrected? Answer those questions. How will that change my life? Do I have to believe the entire Bible before I can come into your church? Like, these are things that people are actually asking. Answer those questions on social media. Either do it by video or do it in graphic form, right? This Easter, you might be wondering if the resurrection is real. Slide carousel. Answer those questions in real language, not in Bible speak, Christianese. Do it in real language. And then at the end of it, say, do an alpha course or invite people to those sorts of things. But start answering questions people are actually asking. Stop answering questions no one's asking. Nobody's sitting there going, hey, that church that's down the street, I wonder what they're doing for Easter. In their regular life, they're not asking that question.
I've heard you say this before, and it's also in your book as well. So if you guys want to go deeper on these ideas and these frameworks and all these thoughts, go check out Meta Church. It's on Amazon, I believe.
Yep.
You can go pick it up there. But I love your approach and your heart for discipleship, and it's data-driven discipleship, and your heart for the Big C Church to advance His kingdom.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your wisdom, your insight, your creativity, and your passion.
Yeah, dude, the feeling is extremely mutual. Having been to your church, knowing that you are trying to reach some of the hardest communities in the world. I honestly believe that. People who think they don't need God because they've got everything. They're affluent. They're working at the biggest companies in the world. They're ridiculously smart. I've never been more intimidated than when I spoke in your church, because I know I'm surrounded by tech gurus. I know I'm surrounded by people who work for Google, Apple. Yeah, and this is why your job is so hard, man. So I want you to know, and I want all of your audience to know, we should be praying for you. I'm praying for you. I pray for you on a regular basis for you and your wife, because I know what you're doing is so hard. But I also know you've got a unique opportunity, bro. If you can crack this, if you can start reaching those people and share that, everybody can start reaching everybody else. So no pressure, but I just want you to know that there are a group of people who are praying for you, man.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Is there any last final words, encouragement for the audience, for church creatives, pastors, anyone who's watching?
Yeah. My last thought would just be the thing that I said right at the start, and it's a thing I've been saying since like 2013, I reckon. Stop using social media as a megaphone. Start using it as a telephone. Start inviting people into into two-way communications. Stop leveraging it to invite people to events. Invite people to conversations. It's conversations that will change people's perspective of Christianity. It's conversations that will open doors for the Holy Spirit to come in and do what only the Holy Spirit can do. But we have to create that environment. And we do that by using it as a telephone, not a megaphone.
If this was valuable to you who are tuning in right now and you want to book Dave, I'm sure he would love to come and speak to your creative teams, your staff teams, but he has a tremendous treasure trove of wisdom and insight and creativity, and he's just ahead of his time. And he's pioneering the way in discipleship and data-driven discipleship, and he has a lot of value to add to your team, to your church, to your community. If you want to book him, find him on social media, Aussie Dave on Instagram, or you can go to mdcreativeaustralia.com. But check him out. Go follow him. He's awesome.
Thanks, bro.